Hello.
Hi.
Hi, guys.
Welcome to another episode of Our Years. I'm Reema.
This is Barry.
And I'm Alli.
This is very exciting because it's the first time we have a guest on the pod.
Woo!
And
I'm so honored.
Very exciting.
Very excited to have Alli. She goes by Alli Edition on all her social media. Do check her out. We'll add all the links. But Alli, thanks so much for taking the time to speak to us.
Of course. I'm happy to be here.
Very exciting to have you here, especially because you're the first person to join our podcast. So, yeah, this is exciting stuff.
Now it feels like a real podcast and not just me and Barry talking in our
Exactly.
living room.
I'm sure that the audience is very excited too to see different face on our podcast.
Yeah. So when we were thinking about how to intro you, we actually didn't even know where to start because I feel like post-COVID, you've had so many multi-dimensions to your life.
Yeah.
You left your job in tech, which you were in for 7 years. You were a product manager.
Mm-hmm.
You left that and then you decided to be a digital nomad.
Yes.
while doing that, you wanted to see what you could do as an entrepreneur full time.
Yeah.
So that's something that you pursued.
Mm-hmm.
You did that for 2-3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then now you've moved back to SF and now you're a full-time entrepreneur, full-time content creator. So there's just so many aspects. I didn't even know how to introduce you. But if you were to introduce yourself, what would you say?
Yeah, I would say, hi, I'm Alli. I'm a ex-tech full-time entrepreneur, just essentially trying to live the fullest life that I can and taking new paths every day. I think a big thing for me is I want to be somebody that's always swimming against the current. And I think that's something I'm sure later we'll talk about kind of dating and marriage as well, but I wanted to be with somebody that didn't want to live a normal life because that is how I would describe myself. I've always been like, okay, if everybody's going this way, I want to go whatever way I want to go, regardless of where they're going.
Yeah.
So for me, I think even these last few years, it's been so unique and maybe countercultural in some ways, especially in San Francisco, where everybody is trying to climb the corporate ladder and do their own thing. Now I'm like a content creator in San Francisco. I'm the odd man out now when you go to happy hours and everybody's like, what do you do? I'm a PM, I'm an engineer, and I'm like, I used to be.
But those are the people that actually attract me when I'm at happy hour, because I feel like it's just so common for people to just be like, oh, I'm in tech, and including myself, right? I think that's so boring. So it's so fun to like meet someone who's not in tech.
Yeah, it's so funny because this past week I was at a happy hour for creators for like some brand event, and somebody's husband was a tech guy.
Yeah.
And he was like, man, I feel so out of place here. And I'm like, this is probably the one room in the whole city right now where you are the anomaly.
Right.
Yeah.
Because anywhere else we would be the anomaly.
Yeah.
That's just different.
Yeah, that's true. Even I think the first time we met, what drew me to you was that we were at a tech networking event. And when you said that you were a content creator, I almost did like a double take. And that's why of all the people in the room, I was like, I need to talk to her more.
In San Francisco, it's so funny because I didn't even know there were influencers in San Francisco.
Same.
I think cities like New York and LA and Chicago, they get so much more hype around content creation and influencers, whereas SF just isn't known for that.
Right.
So when I moved back, I literally had the idea like, oh, let me fill this gap in SF. Nobody's talking about it or like, being an SF creator. And then I started posting about it. And next thing I know, I uncover this whole side of the internet of other SF creators.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, wow, I had no idea you guys existed.
Yeah.
Because it's just so under the radar here.
Right.
Yeah.
Like even in the creator community, I keep meeting people from other niches that I'm like, oh my God, I've never heard of you, but you have like 200,000 followers, but you're just in a lane that I don't watch, like maybe beauty.
Right.
Or I met a girl at this event, she posts about handbags.
Wow, that is niche.
And I was like, I didn't even know that was a niche. And she had like 200,000 followers.
Wait, I think I know who you're talking about. She's an Asian girl.
Yeah, Celeste.
Watch your videos.
It was actually her husband at the event who was like the tech guy.
That makes sense.
And we were just going on and on about content. But I started watching her videos this week.
Yeah,
because
they're
I was
really
like,
good.
what? How do you post entire YouTubes about purses?
Yeah.
And she does, and they're fabulous.
They're great. I watch a lot of her content. I get influenced.
She's really nice.
She is really nice.
Nice. So going back to the start almost of like this journey that you've gone on, what was the trigger for you to be like, okay, I'm going to leave my 9-to-5 tech job?
Yeah. Well, I started my tech job in finance. And I think a few years in, maybe year 3, I started looking at the people above me, like my boss, the CFO, the executives. And I was like, their lives don't look fun.
Yeah.
I don't think I want to live that life, because I remember even somebody who was on the C-suite team, she took me to coffee once and she was telling me she was like about to retire, like just really tough. And then literally the last few months when she was about to retire, all of a sudden she started sharing all this wisdom of what she wished she hadn't done. Like, I wished I hadn't missed picking out a Christmas tree with my family because the CEO wanted this portfolio.
Wow.
And I remember hearing that thinking like, wow, she's now at the end saying she didn't enjoy it either, and that's what I see all my bosses doing.
Right.
So even though in college I thought like, oh, I want to climb the corporate ladder, I want to be a CFO, a CEO, shortly into the actual workforce, I realized like that is not appealing. I'd rather live on my own schedule and have my money work for me, not me trading time for money. And so while I was in finance a few years in, I was like, yeah, I also don't really like being the person that gives people info to make decisions. I want to make decisions. And so then I started looking into other careers, and product management really stood out because they're essentially like mini CEOs.
Right.
They make all the decisions.
Yeah.
And so I was able to pivot into product management, and I loved that for a bit until I didn't. And I think like I started to get so depressed at my job, not because I didn't enjoy being a PM, but because the culture of the team that I was on, I had a bad boss. It was just the trifecta of bad circumstances.
Right.
And I started to get so unhappy at work that I didn't even want to interview anywhere else, because I was just so down bad that I was like, I don't even want to do this anymore. And at the same time, I was a newlywed. We had been traveling a lot. And so I was like, I just want to travel. I just don't want to do anything but travel. And so I started talking to my husband about it, and I was like, you know, what if I quit? Because we had already been kind of testing nomading. Like while we were both working, we moved to Mexico, not moved, but like we kept our apartment and we moved to Mexico City for a month, and we worked from there and didn't tell anybody.
But this was during the time that you guys were both remote? Or
yeah, this was like right after the pandemic. Okay. So 2021, early 2021, we moved to Mexico for a month, and we just didn't tell anybody. You know, like if I had a demo in the office or something, I'd be like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm so sick today. Like I'll have to come in like a week or so when I feel better. Nice. So we kind of tested it out and we loved it. Yeah. And my husband's job was fully remote. His product was online, so he never even had to come in for demos like I did. Okay. And so we were like, let's just do it. But at that point, like on my own, I had made so much money and had built up such like a net worth portfolio that I felt comfortable that I could take a few years off. Yeah. Even without like the support of a husband, that I was comfortable enough that I could take a few years off and like experiment and figure it out. And so I think something that I tell people now too is like, if you do want to do crazy things, you know, build something that you can fall back on to then take risks. And so that kind of gave me the comfort to jump off the ledge and be like, at the same time, my Instagram was starting to grow because I had been posting like some of our travels, and I was like, you know, let me just lean full in. If I'm not being depressed at work and we're traveling full time, I'll have so much more to post about, and I can really lean in. And like worst case, it doesn't work and we move back to San Francisco and I get a job again. Yeah. And I haven't done that yet, and it's been almost 3 years. So
that's so cool. Do you feel like you're like risk seeking?
So this is an interesting thing about being married because I thought I was a risk taker. Yeah. And then I married somebody that is the biggest risk taker. And so now I'm like, in comparison, I might be risk adverse. Yeah, yeah. Because he's the type of guy that would like live out of a car. He just does not care about money or stability. He's very, let's do it all now and like shoot for the moon. But I do think to the average person, I might be risk forward. What's the word?
Risk seeking?
Risk seeking.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I think that makes sense, because then you guys were like, okay, yeah, let's just do it.
Let's just do
it.
And
that really what's got you guys into the space, right?
Yeah, but even with the let's just do it, I felt like I had a backup plan. I had a decent resume. I had decent money to like hold over, that I was like, I have time to risk. Yeah. And I think if I didn't have more security in that way, I don't know if I would have been as risk seeking. So I think that definitely plays a role, because I see some people who like are a year out of college, they don't have any money, they don't have any resume, and they do things like that. Right. And I don't think that's me. I think I need a little bit more. So I might be more methodical and thought out about taking a risk and making sure some things are in place first. You know, I try to do it the smart way, I guess.
No, that makes sense.
But I admire and appreciate the people who are like, YOLO, we'll figure it out as it happens.
Yeah. I think at this age also, like you can't afford to take so many risks, right? So props to those young kids who are just like, let's just do it at like 24 and like don't have a job and just do it.
Yeah. In retrospect, do you guys wish that you had done that in your earlier 20s?
Good question. I don't think I would. Like, I think I'm quite similar to you in terms of like feeling like I need some sort of backup plan or some sort of security for me to like take risks like this.
Yeah.
So
for me, I feel like even when I finished undergrad and started working, I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to do. So similar to that in some sense, where I was not like, okay, I just need the biggest paycheck, that's what's important. I do want to figure out what I want to do. But I've never been in the creative space. So it's really interesting.
First of all, she doesn't have socials at all. Personally. And this is what she does. She'll like sit and scroll on her phone, and I'm like, you don't have socials. Why are you scrolling? She's like, I'm on LinkedIn.
What is interesting on LinkedIn?
People who've left Dolby and then gone on a digital nomad journey.
I don't ever post on LinkedIn. I think my LinkedIn still says like my last job.
Yeah, I think I was just on it this morning, and it says product management.
I wouldn't be surprised. I couldn't tell you the last time I used LinkedIn.
Yeah. So that's quite funny.
Yeah. So I think I think that's what draws me to people who are also very creatively inclined. There's so many facets that people are finding to monetize that I find really fascinating.
I really appreciate this generation. Even like, I think I saw you guys recently turned 30. I'm 31, so we're all in the next wave.
Yeah.
Correct.
But I really appreciate this next wave of, I don't know if it's just Gen Z or even the very youngest millennials who don't want what the generation before us had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like my dad worked at the same company for 25 years.
Same.
Right.
And so when I told my parents that I was quitting my job, like they thought I had lost my mind.
I'm sure.
They were not happy about it. And
did they try talking you out of it?
No.
Okay.
I think they know me well enough that I'm going to do what I want.
Okay.
Which is funny because I was listening to some of your guys' stories about like, you know, what your parents want for you.
Yeah.
And I think it's very different depending on like the culture in your household, you know? And I didn't grow up with parents that were like, you have to do Kumon on the weekends and you have to like study the hardest. I have so many friends like that, but that just wasn't my experience. So I definitely grew up in a more like rebellious child's household where my parents allowed that, which, you know, pros and cons to everything. But no, they judged me for it for sure. Like, we don't want you to do that, but they knew I was going to do it anyways.
Yeah. I'm sure it just stems from like they want the best for you and they're just like scared for the unknown.
Yeah. And it's, I think I found that people can't they don't know what they don't know.
That's true.
And so I think for like our parents' generation, they look at the things that kids now are doing with entrepreneurship or like leaving a job to go create a startup. Like, what does that even mean? And they look at us all like we're kind of crazy. Yeah. And I think it's so cool that this generation has really broken the mold to say, we've seen how you guys did it. We don't want that. Yeah. Like, you guys were so loyal to companies and then your companies fired you, pensions went away. Like, that just isn't the way things work anymore. So I think people are a lot more selfish now. But so were the companies that our parents worked for. And I just don't think our parents' generation had other options the way that we do now.
That's true. Also because of like how the digital age has really blossomed and that has created so many like opportunities and resources for our generation and the later generations. Yeah.
Especially with AI. I mean, I was reading, every week it's something new about like a different job AI can now do. I just was reading about trucking. I forget whose company, whether it was Elon's or somebody else. They just like completed 1 million miles with autonomous trucking vehicles. And it made me think like the further we go, the more day-to-day jobs that maybe our parents' generation did are gonna be gone.
That's true.
Yeah.
And so it's like we have to evolve and create these digital other solutions. And I think one of the coolest things about living in San Francisco is, even though I am kind of an odd one out now as a content creator, is I'm constantly surrounded by people that are finding problems that they want to solve and building the next generation of businesses that are completely innovative and brand new and things our parents couldn't have possibly thought about. Yeah. I think that's one of the coolest things about living in the city is because everybody wants to solve a problem. Yeah. It's so rare to meet somebody who's like, I don't really want to change the world. I just want to retire on a beach. Yeah. Like, I don't know anybody that wants to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you decided, okay, now I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to do this full time, and you and Eli started, giving up your apartment, you started putting things in storage.
Selling everything.
Yeah. Did you have people around you who had done that before, who you were seeking inspiration from, or was it just completely blank slate?
There was one couple we saw online, shout out Claire and Peter, if anybody knows them. They were like both accountants or something, and they had like penny pinched to save enough money to travel the world for a year. And I had shortly started following them like around the time that we were planning to do it. And though they were the only people I had seen that had done anything like that. So I think digital nomading is becoming a lot more common now, not necessarily with people not having a home base like we did, but like traveling for months at a time. Like there's certain hub cities around the world now that are just flooded with nomads. Mexico City, Lisbon, Bali. Like people are just flocking there by the masses.
Yeah. Do you think because you started doing this digital nomading with your husband, do you think that you would have done it if it was by yourself?
Yes. That's actually why I asked you guys earlier, like, would you have taken, looking back, would you might have taken a risk sooner? Because sometimes I wonder if I was still single, like, would I, in some ways marriage has restrictions as well, because like something definitely hindered me while we were traveling is I couldn't share what I wanted to online because we were worried that if his company found out, we were hoping like if anybody from his company saw my travel videos, we could say like, oh, we took a vacation there, because I wasn't saying explicitly like, here's day 305 of digital nomading, which is what I wanted to do.
Was it prohibited in his company, and that's why
his company handbook said don't take your laptop abroad?
I see. Okay, that makes sense.
So we were like, if it works abroad, I mean, if we can get into the VPN, but which, you know, I don't recommend for everybody. We risk takers here. But so I definitely felt hindered in some ways. And so sometimes I wondered, like, if I was single and I could go anywhere, because we also had to factor in the California time zone. So we could only go to certain places because like Asia was just way too hard long term because the hours are so different. So we could only do Asia for like a couple weeks and then burn out. And I just wonder, like, had I been single, I had the income to quit and do it myself, I think I would have, and I probably would have gone even harder, and I probably wouldn't have moved back to the city.
Wow.
So I feel like life would have taken a completely different path.
But who knows? But you feel like you would have still traveled the same way? It's just
because before I met my husband in 2019, my company sent me to live in China for 6 months. And that was a transformative, life-changing experience. And while I was there, I solo traveled all over Asia, and I just fell in love with it. And I was like, this is what I want to do. So even while dating, I knew for a fact that I would never marry anybody that didn't have a passport, that didn't want to live abroad. Like being well-traveled and desiring to live anywhere was really important to me. Because I just fell in love with it by myself. And so it was really cool then being married, getting to take my husband back to some of my favorite places in Asia. And I think something that I always encourage single people to do, because I had maybe not a motto, I had a thought sometimes like, oh, I don't want to experience certain things until I have my life partner because I don't want to like miss out with them, you know? And then I was like, that's so stupid. Do not wait to live your life. Like, honestly, go live your best life and then do it again with your partner. Take them back, make new memories, get to do it twice. Because I think those experiences while you're single, I remember when I lived in China, I knew nobody. And so I joined some expat Facebook groups, and I would just go show up to random places where events were happening, like a bar or something. And I would walk in, not know anybody, and just be like, hi. I'm Alli. Nice to meet you. And that was such a growth experience. And I encourage anybody to go try that. Like, go show up to a bar and try to meet people. It's so hard to get out of your comfort zone, but it's such an amazing growth experience. And I think doing that as much as you can, particularly while you're single, like, go live life to the fullest. Do not slow down or wait for anybody.
Do you feel like you can still do that now that you're married?
Yes and no. I think my husband and I are both super independent still. So we both have we have a lot of overlapping interests, but then we also have a lot of different interests. So like, he's the guy that wants to go to a 300 person tech happy hour and have like 30-second conversations with 200 people. I hate that. And I think you guys mentioned on a prior episode, like, surface level conversations just kill me now. Like, if we're not talking about anything deep or meaningful or changing the world, like, miss me with that. So yeah, we definitely find our different paths for things that we enjoy. And, you know, I have a Airbnb in Tennessee, and we started that business together thinking like, oh, let's diversify our investments and like create a different stream of income. And we quickly learned like we don't enjoy working together.
Oh, interesting.
Wow. Yeah. And I know that was a question that you guys might want to talk about. But I will say we are both very opinionated, headstrong people. And so when you're trying to make business decisions where you're both boss,
yeah,
I think something I learned in the corporate world is a decision-making framework where it's like somebody is a decision maker and then everybody else are stakeholders. That was something we've had to implement in our marriage, because if we're both decision makers, like even trying to align on how to pick a realtor to find a house to Airbnb, we were fighting over.
Wow.
Like he was like, I think we should go this route to like interview people. And I was like, no, we need to go this route. And so we very quickly realized like, okay, let Alli own the business and Eli will be a stakeholder and we'll go from there. And so because of that, like I go to visit the house on my own. I go do a lot of stuff on my own.
Yeah.
And I mean, those are just small things, but I still feel very independent, and I feel like we support each other's independence. Like he'll go on business trips and I'm like, cool. Yeah,
that's great.
See you when you're back.
Yeah. I feel like one of the things we spoke about is like codependency in like a relationship. It sounds like you guys have a very healthy relationship because you're able to do things on your own and come back and like share those experiences with each other.
Yeah, I think it's important to have things you enjoy doing together, but also support each other's interests. Yeah. Like my husband he recently quit his job to work on startups. And so he's just full-time like engineering. It's so funny. During the day, he's working with some co-founders building one thing. And then at night, he's working with engineers in like Pakistan building something else. And that's just his passion. He doesn't think it's work. And I think it's crazy. But I'm like, I love that for you. You do that. And what works well for us is we use Google Calendar to like set our weeks. So we have reoccurring time blocks of when we hang out and like our time together. Yeah. And everything else is free time. And so like if there's an event I want him to go to or something that would be fun for us, I'll send him a calendar invite. Yeah. And he can decline it and be like, oh, I have this other thing I need to do. I'm going to this tech happy hour. And I'm like, cool. Yeah. So I think just figuring out what works with you guys. Like I've told some people that we do a calendar and they're like, oh my God.
We love calendars. Yeah, I set up a calendar for everything.
And I think that's people who are like super driven that need to time block that get that. But I think people that don't want that type of life don't get it. And so I think even when dating, like recognizing how driven people are. Right. Like I don't think somebody who's ambitious can marry somebody who's not ambitious and have maybe there's like, what do they call those like Pilates moms that are with super ambitious people? But like, are they happy? Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. You just have to find like what works for you and what you guys want and figuring out how you manage it all. And for us, it's Google Calendar.
Yes. I love that. What are some things that you took from corporate life that like frameworks or learnings that you took from corporate life that you had to use when you were digital nomading, when there was sort of no structure, no framework? You were sort of, every day was a different day. You were your own boss. It was so different from a 9-to-5. What helped you like sort of put order into that chaos?
Great question. I will say the transition from a corporate employee to an entrepreneur is so difficult, at least in my experience. Maybe some other people had a smoother transition. Yeah. For me, becoming my own boss was really hard to hold myself accountable. So it took me way longer than I like to admit on like figuring out time blocking. Time blocking my calendar or using Notion. Do you guys use Notion? Yeah. I am obsessed with Notion. I do everything on Notion, like my entire life. I have recipes on Notion, just like everything. I built out a whole dashboard for like my weekly agendas and stuff, and I'm just obsessed. But that took me months to figure out. Like for me to really figure out how do I set goals, or even thinking about content creation as a business took me, if I'm being honest, like over a year. Which is almost like embarrassing, but just the transition of figuring out how to be an entrepreneur was so difficult. But the things I would say to answer your question that I took from corporate life were spreadsheets. My entire life is on a Google sheet, literally everything. We planned our wedding on one, my budget. I do my personal finance, my own built out budget tracker, all that kind of thing. Like everything is a spreadsheet. Even like me tracking brand deals and making money as an entrepreneur, spreadsheet. Did I invoice them? Did they pay it? Like just everything. Yeah. And then I think like just skills that you have as a product manager of having to do marketing, finance, engineering. Like you're, you kind of have your hands in everything. Yeah. I think as an entrepreneur, it's the same where you have to have your hands in everything. Yeah. And so something my husband's actually helped me with, he's like my unofficial employee, where I ask him for like strategy help. Like, okay, this is what I'm struggling with. This is where I'm bottlenecked. what do you think I could do to be better at this? Like, how could I speed this up, or how could I be more efficient? And he gives me great feedback about like, hey, you need to time block. You need to hold yourself accountable. Like when this hour window ends, you need to move on and do the next thing. So like you should be doing marketing from here to here. And then you need to move to creativity and like filming. And so I think just time blocking, kind of like in the corporate world where you have meetings and your calendar builds up that way. I have to do the same thing as an entrepreneur, because otherwise it's like I'll spend all day doing one thing and being like, oh my God, I haven't gotten to my emails, or maybe I spent too much time on emails and I didn't create anything today, or you know, stuff like that. Yeah.
One thing we've talked about in the past is how sometimes done is better than perfect when you're your own boss. Otherwise you're just trying to reach this, like you keep changing the goalposts of what perfect or done looks like, and then all these other things are falling behind.
I was reading a book recently, I forgot which one. Do you guys use the Libby app?
Yes.
I'm reading so many books now on Libby that I can't even remember like which quote is from which. Libby's amazing. But I recently read a quote saying like the best entrepreneurs know that like I can't remember exactly, but essentially the best entrepreneurs know that nothing can be perfect, that it's better to get it done and get it out there than to aim for perfection. Like perfection is the death of an entrepreneur, I think is what they were saying. And I found that to be so true. Like even with content, if you're trying to make something too perfect, it's usually the videos that took you 5 minutes to make that go viral, not the ones that you spent 3 hours editing, which is so depressing.
But yeah, I feel like it's like it's a learning curve, right? So you're saying that you took like a year to like figure out how things work for you or what doesn't work for you. I think that's all just like part of the learning experience, and now that you know how to do it, like it's just very quick and easy, right?
I will say it's a constant evolution and journey. Like even the things I know now, I kick myself that I didn't know that a year ago. Or even like thinking about the missed opportunities I had while I was nomading. I'm like, man, the content I could have created or should have created that I didn't do, and now I'm not doing it anymore. Like just missed opportunities. And so I just really have to believe that everything happens for a reason, that there's a time and place for everything, and that we're all on our own life tracks and agendas. And so I just have to believe like, okay, it wasn't meant to happen then, that, you know, I know what I know at the right time, and that I have everything I need today and nothing more. And so I think I look back with regret sometimes, like, man, I wish I figured this out sooner. I wish I had done that then. And it's like, all we can do is take what we know now and do better going forward. So I think for me, something I try to hold myself accountable to is how can I be 1% better today than I was yesterday? And that helps me kind of just keep that forward looking mindset instead of looking backwards and being like, oh man, I messed that up. I shouldn't have done that.
Was there any point in time during this journey where you felt like giving up?
Oh, all the time. Literally all the time. I think having content creator friends is really helpful, because something about being in content creation, you're at the mercy of algorithms. And so like when I first started on Instagram back in 2021, I was averaging, with only like 10,000 followers, I was averaging 50 to 100K views a video.
That's really good.
It was just so much easier back then.
Wow.
And now, literally, I have almost 50,000 followers. And it's like, on average, I feel like these days I'm getting like 5 to 10K views. And I'm like, it's so depressing to compare to what it was. And then like sometimes videos flop. Or I did this brand deal recently and I loved it and I thought the video was great. It flopped. I think it had like 3,000 views, which I think for a brand deal just is not killer. And I was so depressed about it. And I'm like, oh, maybe I'm doing the wrong thing. Like, maybe this isn't the right industry. And then like later that same day in the afternoon, I closed this huge brand deal. And I'm like, okay. So like in the morning, I'm crying like, oh, I'm such a failure. I shouldn't be doing this. And then in the afternoon, I'm like, oh my God, they want to work with me. They want to pay me.
Yeah, truly.
And literally it's like that almost every day. Like I'll post a video I worked really hard on, it flops. And I'm like, man, I thought that would do really well. Or what's crazy is like, if you have a video that does really well and then you try to recreate it or do like a part 2 and it flops and you're like, I thought like, you know, it's like you think you know and you study the analytics and you try to keep doing better and then it flops and you're just like, well, what do you even do? And I think that can be really depressing. And I will say something about being a content creator is it's not like, I think one of you mentioned this on a previous episode, that you know the output is going to create X result. And so it's so easy. Like I think you were saying, if you take a test, like, you know, if you study hard, you're going to get a good grade on the test. It is not like that in content creation. You could study all of the best performing content, read all of the best things, have all the best advice, and you could still suck. Not because you suck necessarily, but because the algorithm thinks you suck, or just a trifecta of things that could impact what's happening. And so I think that, like, trying to stay motivated, I think, becomes challenging, and you really have to have an end goal, either of what you're trying to accomplish, the people you're trying to reach, what's the message you're trying to put out there. And I think for any business, that is still true, because every business is going to run into these obstacles of whether it's like a cash flow thing or a marketing issue. You're going to have these obstacles where you're going to want to feel like giving up. And so you have to have your why. And I think everything in life is like, you have to know your why, because if you're going to do hard things, which I think all of us can agree, like, we want to do hard things. You have to know why. So when challenges come up, you're not easy to give up. And I will say most people don't think like that in my experience, which is why I think people reach out to me all the time, like whether it's from high school or random places, who are like, give me the tips on how to be a creator. And I try to share and like give some points, but at the end of the day, I know like most people don't have what it takes to be consistent, to actually do it. And so even though it's so hard, I know that if you can do one thing, and that's consistency, you're going to have some measure of success, strictly because you beat out 98% of people that aren't willing to do it. And I think even with any business you build, most people won't even start. And like, even with podcasts, did you guys hear the statistic that most podcasts don't make it past episode 7?
I thought it was episode 12.
I heard 7. I asked ChatGPT too. I was at some girl who works for like Go Media or one of the podcast places. She said like 90% of podcasts don't make it past 7. And then I asked ChatGPT, because we just posted 7. And I was like, is this the right one? But it's because most people, like, they give up or they lose consistency. And so I think really in anything in business, if you can be consistent and know your why to keep going, I think you're going to beat out most people.
I think that's true. And that's why, like, one of the things I appreciate about Rima is that she's very consistent, and I think we mentioned that in our previous podcast as well, because now we're on like episode 14. This will be 14.
You guys are crushing it
for us. So you think like consistency is like the biggest motivator to keep you like on this track or in this area?
It's not my why, but I will say I know that if I can keep being consistent, that alone is going to make me more successful than people who aren't willing. Because I mean, even yesterday I had a friend reach out and was like, oh, I'm so inspired by your guys' podcast. Like, I want to start creating content. And I was like, good for you. I'd love to see it. Go do it. But in the back of my head, I'm like, most people probably will fail. Not because of this person in particular, just because most people don't realize how hard it is. And I think in all things in life and in business, like, people underestimate how hard things are going to be. And so they don't have the mental preparation to push through.
That's so interesting you say that, because I feel like we've seen two kinds of people. There are people who are almost delusional about how hard it is. They think it's really easy and that's what keeps them going. They're just like, that's that. Or there are people who are like me, who think of like all the worst case scenarios possible, and that's how they operate, and that's what they need to overcome to become better. So I feel like two different schools of thought.
So true. I so admire the people who are crazy delusional. Like, I am not that way at all. I'm more like you, where I like to think of the worst possible case scenario and like strategize how I'm going to solve it. And once I've done that, I'm like, okay, I can move forward. My husband is like, he literally just started creating content, or like one of his new business ideas. He's like trying to work to create content towards it. And he's been going to some happy hours with me and introducing himself as a content creator.
Love that.
And like, people will be like, oh, what's your handle? And he's like, oh, well, like, I haven't made it yet. And I'm like, that level of like confidence and delusion.
He's
like,
manifesting.
I mean, literally. And I know so many people like that. But it's so funny to live with one, because I'm the type of person where it's like, even at 50,000 followers, where I've made already good money with brands, I feel uncomfortable calling myself a content creator. And here he is with 0 followers, and he's like, guys, I'm a content creator. Like, I'm so successful.
Who's to say not?
Right. I don't know if this is like a men-woman thing, because I also have another content creator friend, and she's got like more than 100K followers. And I asked her on one of our episodes, and she still felt like she wasn't confident enough that she's like a content creator and that she can give advice or wisdom out to the world. It's just so funny that like men are just like, I'm just going to do this, and this is what I am now.
I definitely know some women who are like that too.
Okay.
Like being in the creator space, I've met some girls who like maybe have 2,000 followers.
Yeah.
And they're like full blown, like I'm an influencer, all the things. And I'm like, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that for you because that's definitely not me. And I wish I had a little bit more delusion because I think the people who are a little bit more delusional, and I don't know if delusional is a fair word. Maybe it's like they have this high level of confidence that gives them a certain level of delusion in that they already believe they're more successful than they are. And so they're acting and behaving that way. And I think a lot of big business people will tell you like fake it till you make it.
I was just about to say.
I think Emma Grede says that. Did you guys see? Do you know who Emma Grede is?
No.
Oh my gosh. She's the CEO of like all the Kardashian brands like Skims.
Oh.
She's insane.
Wait, I thought that was Kris Jenner.
No. She's the momager or something. Emma Grede is a businesswoman. She pitched the Kardashians on Good American. That was their first brand together. It was her idea. She pitched Khloe. And then she went on to like build all their other businesses like Skims. I think she's on Safely with Chris and whatever. She's highly successful. She just launched a podcast. I highly recommend it. It's really good. But I think she's one of the people who's like fake it till you make it. You know, you got to walk in and act like you know exactly what you're doing, even though you don't.
Yeah, it's so true. I hear it all the time at work when I first joined. And I think it's really good advice because that has really built your confidence, or my confidence at least, in the workspace. And yeah, it's taken me places.
It's hard to do though. I mean, even now, I was listening to Bill Gates' daughter just launched a new, I don't know if you guys have heard this one either. They just launched a new podcast called Burnouts. And they also launched a business. And her co-founder was saying that in college she was doing like speaking gigs or something and people were offering them to her for free. So she created a fake assistant, like it was herself, but she created a separate email and she was like, great, like let me connect you with like my assistant or manager. I forgot what she called it. Yeah. And her assistant would start negotiating on her behalf. Like, oh, she requires $5,000 like for this and for travel. And she started getting paid strictly because like it made her look more official that she had an employee that was like managing things on her behalf. And I was like, that is freaking genius. I might need to do that.
We might all need to do that.
It's almost like having a different persona.
Right.
And this persona has the personality that you wish you had, but it's behind the screen so no one can tell. That's incredible. Yeah.
And then you don't worry as much about the backlash. Like, oh, Brandon said that to you? Yeah. Oh, I fired him. Meet Susie.
Yeah. I love that.
What an incredible idea.
Oh, there's so many different ways to get to success and, you know, what works different for everybody. I definitely wish I had more delusion and I'm working on it, but, you know.
So when you were nomading and then you're figuring out all of this by yourself, it's a new world, multiple new worlds because you were traveling so often. And you mentioned that you were also a newlywed at the time. Yeah. What were some cultural shocks given that you were traveling so often that you saw?
I think the biggest culture shocks in the best way, whereas that most countries, at least all the ones we visited, we went to about 20-ish outside of the US, have such better community culture than, at least in San Francisco, than we have here. Like we lived at this spot in Lisbon and this neighborhood park near us, it was like a tiny little park and they had like little shops around it, like a wine bar, and you could get wine and go sit in the park, whatever. On any given night of the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, there would be a ton of young people just hanging out with friends, little families there with like kids. People were just always out and about socializing, and we'd meet people and they're like, oh yeah, you know, I just called up my friend this morning and was like, hey, let's meet for wine after work. And my husband and I were like, we have to plan things with our friends like a month out. Yeah. And people were saying like, that's such an American thing. Like we don't do that here. Yeah. And I just feel like people live such a more fulfilled, like I feel like other cultures are so much more based around like food and community. Whereas in the US, I think we're much more isolated, even in regards to our city planning. Something I really hate about the US, and I don't know if you haven't seen it because you're not on social. But some people create like these funny videos of like, oh, my European friend came to visit and he wanted to go for a walk. And his American friend was like, walk where? Like through the parking lot. Yeah. Like our streets are just so ugly here and we're so isolated. And they say like Americans are so much more obese because we drive everywhere, which is one reason I don't think I would ever move out of a city, whether it's San Francisco or New York, because I don't want to go back to like a suburban life where you're driving everywhere. You're more isolated. I love that we can live in a building like you guys live a few blocks from me. So we could literally like meet up or run into people anywhere. So I think culture wise, a big thing was anywhere we went, we would kind of self-analyze together what we liked and what we didn't like. And I think a big thing we didn't like anywhere was because we're so motivated and from San Francisco where people work long days.
Yeah.
We would try to work on weekends, like on a Saturday, and coffee shops would have signs like no laptops. Almost everywhere we went, it was like there is no culture of work on the weekends.
Wow.
So you couldn't even open your laptop at a cafe. Whereas here in SF, you walk by any coffee shop any day.
Yeah.
There's at least one person sitting there with a laptop. And so like we really liked the community aspect. But then can you have best of both worlds? Can you have really ambitious people that are also very community centric? And that's a question I think we came home with that I don't know that there's an answer to, because we really liked the thing we really liked, I think almost counteracted the thing we didn't like.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you find that balance of community and being flexible, but also being really driven and passionate and wanting to work on whatever you're working on at any given hour, you know?
Right. Were there like certain aspects of traveling that you really enjoyed versus you didn't really enjoy?
1,000%. I think digital nomading, it looks so glamorous. And even sometimes I would post about it and I'd be like, oh, I know this looks more glamorous than it really is. Because, you know, obviously it's incredible and such a privilege to be able to travel and live somewhere else, multiple places where most people haven't even visited. Like recognizing what a privilege that is so incredible and so amazing that not only do you get to go experience other cultures and other cuisines and see such beautiful places in the world, that's obviously the pro. But the downside is you're constantly moving. You're living out of suitcases. Like because we had sold everything, we didn't have a home to come back to. We had a storage unit. So every like 3 or 4 months, we'd come back to our storage unit and we'd swap our clothes in our suitcase.
Because you were traveling per season.
Exactly. Exactly. So we'd spend like 2 hours in a storage unit swapping everything.
Interesting.
And then we'd go again. And like those days were brutal because like you have to have a packing list to be able to do that. It's just so stressful. And then like if you forget anything, you know, it's just like everything is so compact to what you can bring. And then like you're constantly moving, you're constantly figuring out a new routine. So every time we would move to a new city, it's like, where's the grocery store? Where's the gym? And when you're living in another country, like even grocery stores, they're so different.
Right.
Like in the US, you go to one store and you get everything.
Yeah.
Everywhere else, it's like there's a meat shop, a cheese shop, a wine shop. Like you just have to figure out new things. And I couldn't figure out, I think we were living in France and I was like, why doesn't the grocery store have like good meat? Everything is like lunch meat. Like where's the actual meat that you cook? And then it took me like a month to realize they have meat stores.
Oh, wow.
Things like that, finding your routine can be really difficult. And I think you can start to fall apart because I think everybody needs routine. And I think it's in the book Atomic Habits that it talks about when you do things every day,
you get better at it.
Your brain stops thinking about it. And so it doesn't become a mental burden. But when you're constantly changing what you're doing, it becomes a mental burden and it starts to drain you and take energy from you. So we eventually got to a place where it was like we were working so hard on what we were trying to build individually that the mental toll of traveling just stopped making sense. Because the other thing is you're constantly planning where you're going next. So it's almost like every day I was doing a little bit of research or planning to book the next thing. It's just a never ending cycle. And I mean like, you know, it's such a luxury to be able to do that. So
but the logistics is a lot.
So I don't want to like complain and say, you know, there's hard things that come with it, but there definitely are trade-offs that add up. And I think after a while it's like, okay, I think we just want our own home. I think we just want to have our own couch and not a crappy Airbnb IKEA couch, you know, and just like have a home again.
Is that what led you guys to want to come back to SF and settle down?
Yeah, we both at that point, we were trying to find a house to buy to Airbnb.
Okay.
And this was around like January. We found a house. We ended up putting an offer on it while we were in France at the time. So we hadn't seen the house and we were both like working on different things. My husband had just learned to code. So he was like building this engineering thing. And we were both kind of like, I think we just need to be in one place. He wanted to be back in the tech community to like find founders and like people to build with. And I just wanted to be in one place because I was the planner for all the travels. So I just wanted to like really spend time and effort on my stuff. And that was kind of where we got to the point of like, okay, well, we're buying this house. Let's just move back because we learned that trying to buy a house from a different country.
It's tough.
You have to like go to an embassy to get notarized. It's a whole thing. So we were like, let's just fly back, buy this house and be done.
Yeah. And you guys are originally from SF.
I'm from the East Bay and my husband's from Dallas. But this is home. We wouldn't live anywhere else unless it was abroad or New York.
I think we can wrap it up here because we do want to do a second part with Alli because we have so much to talk about. So we'll wrap it up for this one. I'll see you guys in the next one for part 2.
I'll see you there too.
Bye.
Bye.